We're just a matter of days removed from a hugely pivotal matchup for this era of mixed martial arts. And don't get me wrong, I don't only mean that in terms of, oh, will Conor McGregor regain his form, and that entire narrative. Because in recent months, and it has been a slow burn, I've found myself becoming more and more drawn into what this fight means for Dustin Poirier, and what a win would do for him as a statement about his merits as one of this era's defining fighters. The second matchup between these two showed me a lot about Dustin. It showed me things about the Diamond that I couldn't have helped but overlook, given his status as the barrier between my country's biggest star and his own quest for redemption. Now, I'll get into this in greater detail in my McGregor video, so keep an eye out for that in the coming days. But for me, as an Irishman, as a passionate supporter of my country's athletes, I've always found that my relationship with Conor McGregor has been intense, it's been painful and contradictory, but it's also something that has birthed some of the most memorable moments of my entire life. We Irish do not mess around when it comes to our unconditional support, and though I largely try to remove my bias from my work, when fight night comes around and I get a few pints into me, I'm truly a lost cause. That's why I don't make videos on Sunday, folks. But after the dust settled on that rematch and I began to process what had actually happened, what had happened not only on fight night, but what had transpired in the time between their first and second matchups, how Poirier had overcome his own demons, been totally honest with himself about how he had been mentally beaten by Conor before the octagon doors even closed, I ended up feeling something that was very different to how I felt when Nate Diaz or Khabib bet McGregor, where usually I can't help but feel that defeat in its fullest and then, experience the reverberation through this country, which I still did. I was in many ways taken aback at just how happy I was for Dustin Poirier, how inspired I was to see this man get to the top of his own mountain, 7 years after he was well and truly embarrassed by Conor McGregor. Because had he not digested that defeat and come to some very tough revelations, he could well have remained as nothing more than a footnote in the rise of the sport's biggest star. And I know that's an understatement and a bit unfair, but I mean that in the broadest sense of the word. And what I mean to say is that Dustin could have well been defined by that defeat. He could well have not taken the difficult lessons from how that fight went. And even if he continued his career with some success, I truly believe that his shift in mentality, the peace that he found from accepting the reality of that loss, those are the things that led him back to Conor McGregor, to fight him once again when it really mattered. Because this wasn't some top 10 featherweight clash, this was a massive pay-per-view with huge implications for both the winner and the loser. And as much as I'll still without question be an emotional mess on Saturday night when Conor makes his walk, egging him on in the hopes that he clatters Dustin's pea head off the canvas, if I may borrow a quote. The merits of what Poirier has transformed into are not lost on me. Win, lose or draw. He didn't give up when Michael Johnson stunned him early in 2016, knocking him out in the first round to bring his lightweight resurgence to a crashing halt. And he didn't give up when Khabib Nurmagomedov thoroughly bet him to defend his title at UFC 242, as he returned 8 months later to prove his mettle in an instant classic battle against Dan Hooker. And then from there, as we all know, the opportunity came to take on his great rival again at UFC 257, a man whose name has dogged him for the last 7 years through constant questions. The whole, what do you think of your past opponent Conor McGregor fighting Jose Aldo, fighting Eddie Alvarez for 2 belts? Oh look, he's fighting Floyd Mayweather, what do you think of that, Dustin? There was clearly no shortage of constant reminders to Poirier about his connection to this blockbuster superstar, and no matter how mentally tough you are, that must have been a major challenge for the Diamond. So when Dustin returned to take on McGregor in the rematch, and kept his composure, stuck to the game plan, and made his veteran savvy the difference between the two, yeah, not only was I impressed, but I was thoroughly happy for the man. And I know that conflict goes against my pride in seeing an Irishman competing at such a high level, but hey, I'm only human here. His performance was assured, it was confident, and in his unwillingness to give Conor the respect inside the cage, the type of mental shortcomings that have been a definitive factor in the losses sustained by Aldo, by Alvarez, and so on, that clearly took a level of focus and adherence to discipline that I really want to hammer home for you guys. If you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads, before leaving a comment to let YouTube's algorithms know that we are fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. Dustin, up until that point, had absolutely no way of knowing just how being in there with McGregor would affect him, how it might trigger something within him. After all those years, all those questions from the media, that knockout he sustained. But from my vantage point, and for most of ye, he performed admirably and did exactly what he needed to do to get the job done. And yeah, it took quite a long time for me to come around to this trilogy fight, to feel excited for it in a way that I usually do for fights of this magnitude. But given that these two are about to settle their trilogy with a fight that really could go either way, yeah, I'm actually more excited for this matchup than I even was for their last one. Because at UFC 257, that fight was competitive, it was enthralling, exciting, and even if the finish was emphatic, the routes to victory that were exploited by Dustin on the night could in theory be fixed by the time this third bout rolls around. I don't know that for sure, but as I have often said, I'm always wary of betting against a fighter who has proven themselves to be capable of being great. And Conor McGregor certainly has that in his locker. But if that rematch earlier this year showed us anything, it's that Conor will be in there with a fighter who has proven himself in many ways to be even greater than him. A fighter who reached that status through a much messier road, a far less glamorous road. It's less about the singular moments of magic that make up the back catalogue of Dustin Poirier. He didn't knock out a long-reigning champion in 13 seconds or put on a masterclass like Conor's win over Alvarez in Madison Square Garden. But what Dustin has shown cannot really be immortalized on a highlight reel, or condensed down into 30 seconds of water cooler conversation. His achievements run a lot deeper than that. They're born out of grit, out of perseverance, and out of an inability to quit and wilt under past failures. His highlights are spread over his 5 rounds with Max Holloway, his journey into the depths with Justin Gaethje, his pair of showdowns against Eddie Alvarez, that war with Dan Hooker. To truly understand the merits of Dustin Poirier as a great fighter, as an era-defining fighter, you gotta be prepared to take a dive into the man's story. From the Fightville documentary and his unsuccessful run as a featherweight, to his failure to capture Khabib's belt. And I suppose given what this win over Conor McGregor represents, Dustin is only really getting his dues now. But in reality, as far as I'm concerned, his resume is aging like a fine wine. And though he couldn't find a way past Khabib, it only really serves to prove the Eagles' levels within this division. So I'm going to refrain from making a concrete prediction on this fight because I genuinely believe that either man can win it. And as of right now, my emotions are running a bit too hot to make my pick in any way worthwhile. I do believe that the best man will come out on top. And as simple as that sounds, trust me, it's all I need to say. And I suppose from there, I do think that it would be fair to say that the winner of this fight is the best lightweight on the planet. I know Charles Oliveira was crowned champion in a fight that saw the UFC attempt to avoid crowning a champion who had already been beaten by Khabib. But while I completely understand Dubronx and his claim to that top spot, believe me, this man is a great fighter. I don't think he can steal that claim away from Poirier right now. And as a result, if Conor can actually defeat Dustin, I think that discussion will have to be reopened at the very least. But either way, I don't really want to speak about Charles Oliveira right now. There's far too much to be learned in the next week. Too much that remains completely up in the air. All I wanted to do with this video was put my respect and appreciation for Dustin Poirier into perspective for you guys. He truly is the complete package as far as what I want in a champion. And if he can continue this run by closing the book out on his rivalry with Conor McGregor, he deserves nothing less than the highest praise for this journey. A journey that was 7 years in the making. 7 years he spent dealing with a minute and a half's worth of a failure at UFC 178. That takes a level of focus and drive that should be held in the highest of regard. But what do you make of Dustin's claim at being the greatest lightweight fighter on the planet? And do you think that he'll be able to do the double over Conor McGregor on Saturday night? Do let us know your opinions in the comments section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.